Okay, welcome back to our discussion on using Go and PostgreSQL together. So we have our main.go file set up. We have our go.mod file. And so the next thing I want to do is to install a driver, a database driver that will allow us, that will allow Go to communicate with Postgres. Okay, so if you can think of it, you could have your Go application here, and we have our PostgreSQL server database here. Okay, now normally they can't speak to each other. So what we do, we need a database driver that acts as a middle person. Okay, and so when we need to communicate with the database, we will pass it off to the database driver, and the database driver will then send that information to Postgres. And whatever Postgres sends back, then the database driver will relay that to us. Okay, so that's the reason why we need this database driver. All right, sort of a middle person. Okay, so we need to install a database driver. Okay, and so to install a package, we use the go get command. Okay, so go get and the name of the package. So it's github.com /lib/pq. Okay, all right. And so we have our database driver installed. Okay, so I'm going to open all of this inside VS Visual Studio Code. And what you'll notice, okay, I have my go.mod, okay, and it has this require, okay, and then I have this go.sum, okay. So what I want to do, I simply want to run, and it's probably telling me, right? So let me just run go mod tidy. Okay. Oops. Okay. All right. Yeah, I know. Okay. So let's work on this. So we will now start our program. So package main. Okay. Now we will need to import. Okay. So what I want to import, I want to import this okay, the database package, okay, that Go provides us. Okay, so this is provided by Go. Okay. Okay. And we know it's provided by Go because there is no github.com written beside it. Okay, so we're going to use FMT and we're going to use log. Okay, and the last thing we do is to use the database driver that we just installed. Okay, so we usually put a space. This is just a convention. We put a space and then we specify, we say github.com /lib/pq. Now, I'm going to put an underscore and then a space. Okay, and the reason we put an underscore is because if you remember, when you don't use a package, Go removes it, okay, and Go complains. So we will not be directly using the code in this database driver that we just installed. We want this to sort of be connected with what the Go language provides us. Okay, so this is used in combination with this. Okay, so we never directly use what is in here. Okay, the purpose of this is to be used with this one that is provided by Go. So to specify that, I put an underscore, which tells Go, okay, I need this package, but it's not going to be used by the user. It's going to be used by something else. It's going to be used by this. Okay, with that out of the way, okay, so this one is third party package. Okay, somebody else. All right, let me close that. So what I want to do, okay, we want to be able to connect to our database. So we need to specify the credentials for our database. Localhost, who's the user, quote box, what is the password, what is the name of the database, that sort of thing we need to provide. Okay, so that's the first step here. Provide the credentials for our database. So provide the credentials for our database. Okay. All right. So we will provide those credentials as variables. Okay. So we're going to make them constant. Okay. They won't be able to change. So I'm going to say const host is, oops, is localhost. Okay. The okay, const again. Okay, but that brings me to a good point. I don't want to have to type const every time. So to avoid that, I'm just gonna say const. Okay, just like what I do here. Okay, I didn't have to say import this and import this and import this and import this. No, all I did was to say one import and in parentheses all the things I want to import. So I'm going to do the same thing here. All of these are consts, but I will only specify the keyword const once. So I'll say host localhost port. Okay, what port are we connecting to? 5432. Okay. User is quote box. Our password is of course pound sword fish. And the database name is again quote box. Okay, so these are credentials. Okay, notice I have them outside. So I'm gonna have main. Okay. And so I'm gonna create a variable which will be a formatted string. Since we need to provide a formatted string to the function that allows us to work with databases. So I'm going to create what is called a DSN, okay? A data source name. What is the name what is the credentials for the source of our data. So data source name. Okay, it's a common terminology. So DNS is just a fancy acronym. Okay, data source name. Okay. So when you read literature books, you might see them talk about the data source name. All it means is the credentials. Okay, so we're gonna say that we're gonna create a formatted string. Okay, in other words, it's just a string. Okay, so DSN will just be a string, something in quotes. And what will it be? Well, it will be this credential. So the credential will be host. It will have an equal sign, and then it will have what the host is. And then it will have the port, the equal sign, followed by the number. Oops, what is this doing here? Okay. All right, so the quote should come at the end. Okay, so after the port, we're going to have the user, equal sign, and who is the user. Just like how we have done it on the command line, where we have host equal, username equal, DB name equal, and so on. Same thing. All right, password equal some string. All right, DB name again is some string. And then this final one, we're going to hard code it. SSL mode is this able. Okay. The reason why we put this is because if we don't, then we'll get an error message. Okay, saying that we can't connect because of an SSL error. Okay, so we disable this. Okay, so once we have our string, we have a comma, and then of course, after the comma, we specify all the variables that will eventually fill in those specifiers. So what will fill in the host? It will be the variable host. What will fill in the next one? It will be the variable port. What will fill in the next one? It will be the variable user. What will fill in the next one? It will be password. And finally, DB name. Okay, so DSN now is just one long string. Okay, that will be shown. Okay, if I print it, fmt dot print line DSN, okay, just to show you that it's a string. Go run man. Go. Okay. Of course I imported it. Well, let's try again. Go get github.com/lib/pq. Okay, it was added. Okay, go mod tidy. Okay, let's try running my program. Okay, so notice it's this long string that gets generated. Okay, all right, so it's a string. Okay, so we don't need this anymore. This was just to show you. Okay, all right, so we have our data source name. So what we need to do now, we need to sort of establish this connection to the database. Okay, so let's Let's establish a connection to the database using our credentials. Okay, can we connect? Well, we're going to use this function sql.open. Okay, right? Remember, we have this package up here, which is SQL, and it has a lot of functions. One of them is open, and it's telling me opens a database specified by its database driver name and a driver specific data source name. Once again, DSN. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's try to open this database. So we need to provide, notice it tells me I need to provide a driver name before the DSN. And for Postgres, the driver name, this is just something you have to know, is Postgres. All right. And then we'll simply provide the DSN. Now, this will return the database, all right, and any error, right, the connection and any error. So I need to say, okay, I don't, I'm going to say db, comma, error. Okay. Okay. So whenever you're writing Go code, you'll see this pattern a lot. Whenever an error is returned, you have to explicitly check to see if the error is something that is not nil. Okay, so if error is not nil, nil is good. If the error is nil, it means there was no error. So if the error is not nil, we have to do something. And in this case, we're going to simply stop the program. Okay, and so we're going to say log that fatal an error. Okay, so stop the program and then display the error. Now, obviously, if this if is skipped, it means that there was no error. And so if there is no error, then logically, we go to line 30. All right. Now, we're going to use the differ statement, and we're going to say differ db dot close. Okay, and so you might be asking, I haven't seen differ before. What is the point of differ? Why are we closing the connection? Okay, whenever you're dealing with resources such as files, database connections, network connections, they're valuable resources, just like memory, right? In your programming class, they always tell you if you use new, you have to free, right? Create a pointer, free it. Why? Because eventually you'll run out of space from the heap. So the same thing applies to resources like database connections. If anything were to happen to my program, let's say it crashes, okay? This differ db.close says, whatever happens to my program, before you exit, always make sure to execute line 30. So it's like always do this before exiting. Okay? So if your program crashes, no problem. Before Go exits, it actually will come back and look for this differ, and it will say, okay, what do I need to do before I leave? Well, I need to close the DB connection since I opened it. All right. Okay, and of course this can come at the end if you wanted to, but I decided to put it on line 30. Now, if we didn't have an error, okay, it means that our database should have connected correctly. However, we have a problem. Go will not automatically allocate any resources to this connection unless or when we actually, only until we actually start using it. So let me say it again. If the connection works, Go will only give us the resource when we ask for it. So even though the connection might have been established and it works and everything, Go doesn't really allocate any space for it unless it sees code that actually uses the connection. Okay, that way it gets to save resources. Okay, so how do we test to make sure the connection was actually good before we start using it? Well, you could test the connection, and I'll refer to your networking courses. Okay, how do we test for something? Well, we will say db.ping. Okay, and so what will happen? We'll actually check to see if the connection was created correctly by simply doing a ping. Does it answer? All right. Now, if it answers, then all is good. All right. Now, if it doesn't answer, all right, and so if I come here, all right, see, returns an error. So ping verifies a connection to the database is still alive, establishing a connection if necessary. All right. So when I say ping, then Go will say, okay, let me try to see if this database actually works. Okay, and so if it works, no problem, but it will return an error that is not nil if there's a problem. So it returns something and say I save it in this variable error. Notice I use the equal sign, and the reason I'm using an equal sign, assignment sign, sorry, and not the colon as equal is you can only use the colon equal once. Okay, so here I used it to create a variable name error. Okay, I can't use it, I can't create another variable name error again. I can only reassign to that variable. Okay, so what do I do? Well, I check if error that was returned, if is not nil, it means my ping didn't work and something is wrong. Okay, and so if something is wrong, if I can't make a connection, then I know I have to exit. Okay, of course, if the error is nil, it means that everything is fine. And so I could do a simple statement and I could say, okay, connection status. Yeah, we could say fmt dot print line, and we know for sure that I could say connection status success. Okay. Okay. So again, the only way we could get to line 37 is if we skip this if. And the only way we can skip this if is if error is actually nil, meaning okay. 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 And you notice the pattern when you check for errors. If there's an error, you do something. If not, then it's skipped and you move on to the next thing that you should do in your list. All right. All right. So let's verify that this actually works. Is our connection established? Do we have a good connection? Let's see. Okay, so go run, let go. Okay, so connection status success. So we have our connection set up, which means that we are able to now interact with our database via or through our code in this file. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to look at that. We're going to actually create an SQL statement where we will insert a new row into our quotations table. I'll see you in that video.